There are energies that open doors, and there are energies that quietly close them. Some things do not scream danger, they whisper it. And today, you are about to uncover why a single color, when placed inside a home, can silently block blessings and invite scarcity without anyone noticing. Before we go deeper into this ancient wisdom, I invite you to support this spiritual project by subscribing to the Jewish Wisdom channel. Each subscription helps this message reach more lives that are searching for clarity, balance, and divine alignment. And as a declaration of intention, write this simple phrase in the comments. My home is aligned with blessing and peace. A house is never just walls and furniture. In the wisdom of Scripture, a home is described as a spiritual vessel. From the earliest texts, we learn that environments absorb intention, memory, and spiritual residue. In the book of Genesis, light is the first element God introduces into creation. Darkness is not created, it is removed. This detail is not poetic coincidence. It reveals a spiritual principle that still governs physical spaces today. Many people pray for abundance, peace, and protection, yet they unknowingly surround themselves with elements that contradict those prayers. Ancient Jewish wisdom teaches that blessings flow where harmony exists between the physical and the spiritual. When there is conflict between what we ask for and what we cultivate, the flow becomes restricted. This teaching is rarely spoken about openly, not because it is unimportant, but because it requires spiritual sensitivity. The sages understood that color is not neutral. Color carries emotional frequency, symbolic meaning, and spiritual resonance. In Hebrew tradition, colors are deeply connected to states of consciousness and spiritual alignment. Some colors elevate, while others absorb vitality. But the full meaning of this principle was never revealed all at once. It was transmitted carefully, generation by generation, because it requires responsibility. And the deeper revelation begins now. In the Torah and throughout the Tanakh, darkness is consistently associated with concealment, limitation, and spiritual blockage. This does not mean night itself is evil. Night has purpose. But prolonged darkness within a space of dwelling was never encouraged. In the book of Isaiah, light is associated with redemption, expansion, and divine favor, while darkness represents stagnation and restraint. Rabbinical teachings explain that when darkness dominates a living environment, it affects the emotional and spiritual state of those who dwell there. This is why sacred spaces in ancient Israel were designed to maximize light. Even the tabernacle, though enclosed, was illuminated intentionally. Light was not decorative, it was functional for the soul. The color black, when excessively used inside the home, especially on walls, ceilings, and dominant furniture, symbolically represents absorption rather than reflection. It absorbs light, emotion, and spiritual flow. In mystical interpretation, black represents contraction. It pulls energy inward and holds it there. When used with intention and balance, it can symbolize humility. But when it dominates a home, it creates an atmosphere of heaviness. In Jewish mystical thought, abundance flows through openness. Scarcity flows through contraction. This is why the sages warned against environments that emotionally weighed down the spirit. A home should restore the soul, not quietly drain it. This is not superstition, it is alignment. When a person lives surrounded by excessive darkness, their motivation subtly lowers. Their emotional clarity becomes clouded, and their sense of hope weakens over time. Even without realizing it, they begin to expect less from life, and expectation is the gateway of blessing. Now, this teaching becomes practical. Look around your home not with judgment, but with awareness. Ask yourself what emotions your space evokes when you wake up. Do you feel lightness or heaviness? Expansion or contraction? Peace or pressure? Applying this wisdom does not require extreme changes. Jewish tradition always emphasizes balance. Replace excessive darkness with warmth. Introduce colors associated with life: soft whites, earth tones, gentle blues, natural light. These colors reflect rather than absorb. They invite flow rather than stagnation. And most importantly, introduce intention. A space changes when consciousness enters it. As you adjust your environment, declare alignment. Speak life into your home. Write this phrase now in the comments as a second declaration. I choose light, flow, and blessing in my home. There is a story told among the sages of a man who prayed daily for prosperity, but lived in a house where light never entered. His windows were covered, his walls dark, his atmosphere heavy. When a rabbi visited him, he did not speak about money. He opened the windows. Within months, the man's clarity returned. His opportunities increased. not because the house was magical, but because his spirit was no longer compressed. Our environments teach our souls how to feel. And what the soul feels, the mind believes. What the mind believes, life reflects. If this message resonates with you, share in the comments what you felt while listening. Did this reveal something about your own space? Did it awaken awareness? Let this moment become a turning point. Faith is not only what we believe, it is what we allow around us daily. And if you are enjoying this theme and want to go deeper, we have prepared a complimentary resource. There is a Jewish wisdom ebook focused on abundant Jewish prosperity, rooted in ancient teachings and practical spiritual alignment. To access it, the link is available in the description of this video or in the first pinned comment. It is designed to help you transform not only your space, but your mindset and spiritual flow. Remember this final truth and let it seal this message within you. Where light is welcomed, blessing has permission to enter. The foundation of this wisdom begins long before modern design or psychology existed. It begins in the language of creation itself. In the Hebrew worldview, reality is not shaped only by actions, but by states of being. Every object, every color, every space carries a spiritual function. This is why the Torah does not treat light as decoration, but as a force. And God said, "Let there be light." Light appears before structure, before form, before order. Because light reveals, and what is not revealed cannot flow. In ancient rabbinical interpretation, light represents expansion, mercy, clarity, and divine openness. Darkness, by contrast, is not evil in essence, but it is concealment. It hides, it contracts, it limits perception. When darkness is temporary, it serves rest and introspection. When it becomes permanent, it becomes spiritual compression. The sages taught that blessing requires vessels. But not all vessels can receive. A vessel must be open. In mystical language, abundance flows from above, only when the channel below is prepared to receive. Excessive darkness in a living space symbolically narrows that channel. It creates an inner posture of defense, rather than reception. In the Psalms, we read that God clothes himself with light, as with a garment. This imagery is deliberate. Clothing is what we are surrounded by. It touches us constantly. When light is described as divine clothing, it signals that light is meant to surround, not just illuminate. A home, in Jewish understanding, is also a garment of the soul. It surrounds the inner life of those who dwell there. This is why traditional Jewish homes were designed with openness, brightness, and balance. Even in times of scarcity, light was preserved. Candles were not optional. Windows were sacred. The Shabbat candles themselves are not only ritual, they are a spiritual correction of the space. They restore harmony between the visible and the invisible. In Kabbalistic thought, black is associated with the concept of Tesimsim contraction. Tesimsim is necessary at the beginning of creation, when God withdraws to make space for the world. But contraction is not meant to dominate ongoing life. After contraction must come expansion. After concealment must come revelation. When black or very dark tones dominate a home, especially in sleeping areas and communal spaces, the soul receives a constant message of withdrawal. Over time, this affects emotional posture. People become guarded without knowing why. Hope becomes cautious. Expectation lowers. And abundance, which responds to openness, finds resistance. The rabbis warned that a person can unknowingly create spiritual barriers while sincerely praying for breakthrough. Not because prayer lacks power, but because the environment contradicts the intention. Heaven responds to coherence. There is a passage in Deuteronomy that speaks of blessing resting in your house. The wording is intimate. Blessing is not abstract. It settles. It dwells. But like any guest, it responds to atmosphere. This is the ancient secret many never hear. Scarcity is not always the result of effort or morality. Sometimes it is the result of silent misalignment. A home that absorbs instead of reflects. A space that compresses instead of expands. This wisdom was never meant to create fear or rigid rules. It was meant to restore awareness. To teach that spiritual life is lived daily, through choices that seem small but speak loudly to the soul. What you surround yourself with teaches your spirit how to breathe. And what restricts the breath of the spirit will eventually restrict the flow of blessing. This is not about rejecting darkness entirely. Balance is sacred. A touch of contrast can ground. But dominance shapes destiny. Light invites movement. Excessive darkness invites stillness that turns into stagnation. The sages said, when light enters, blessing recognizes the way, and this understanding prepares the heart for how this ancient principle can be lived. not in fear, but in wisdom, through conscious daily application. What ancient wisdom reveals is never meant to remain abstract. Revelation without application becomes curiosity, not transformation. This teaching was preserved because it was lived, practiced, and tested in real homes, with real struggles, real hopes, and real limitations. And this is where the teaching becomes intimate, where it moves from concept to daily life. Applying this principle begins not with paint or furniture, but with awareness. Jewish wisdom always starts from consciousness. The sages taught that when awareness enters a space, chaos loses authority. Before changing anything externally, you are invited to observe your environment with new eyes, not as decoration, but as dialogue. Your home is speaking to you every day. The question is whether you are listening. Notice how you feel when you enter your space at the end of a long day. Does your body soften, or does it remain tense? Does your mind open, or does it close inward? These reactions are not random. They are responses to atmosphere. The soul reacts faster than logic. It knows when a space nourishes it, and when it drains it. The application of this teaching is gentle, not drastic. Jewish tradition never promotes extremes. It promotes alignment. Begin by identifying where darkness dominates rather than supports. This is especially important in areas where you rest, eat, pray, or gather. These spaces are spiritually active. They either replenish or deplete. Introduce light intentionally. Natural light is considered a blessing in itself. The sages associated sunlight with divine kindness that renews daily without effort. Open windows when possible. Allow air and light to circulate. This movement symbolizes openness, and symbolism matters deeply in spiritual practice. When natural light is limited, artificial light should be warm and inviting, not harsh or dim. Warm light mimics the glow of candles, which in Jewish tradition represents peace, presence, and continuity. This is why candles are lit before Shabbat, to restore spiritual balance in the home. Color choices matter, but intention matters more. Soft whites symbolize purity and openness. Earth tones represent stability and grounding. Gentle blues are associated with the heavens and spiritual calm. These colors reflect rather than absorb. They allow energy to move. But there is a deeper layer to application that goes beyond color alone. The sages taught that blessing responds to coherence between words, actions, and environment. This means your home should support the life you are praying for. If you pray for peace, your environment should not constantly agitate the senses. If you pray for abundance, your space should not communicate lack, heaviness, or withdrawal. This is where many people unknowingly block themselves. They declare faith, but their surroundings rehearsed fear. They speak hope, but their environment whispers contraction. Over time, the whisper becomes belief. To correct this, Jewish practice emphasizes verbal alignment. Words shape reality. This is why blessings are spoken aloud. As you make adjustments to your space, speak intention into it. This may feel simple, but simplicity is where power hides. Stand in your home and say words of alignment. Speak peace. Speak openness. Speak gratitude. Gratitude, in particular, is considered one of the strongest vessels for blessing. The sages taught that gratitude expands the soul, and an expanded soul attracts expanded provision. This is a powerful moment to engage consciously. Write this phrase in the comments as a living declaration, not just a sentence. My home reflects light, openness, and divine flow. By writing it, you participate. Participation turns information into covenant. It signals readiness. Daily application also includes maintenance of order. In Jewish thought, disorder is not morally wrong, but it creates spiritual noise. Noise disrupts clarity. Clarity invites blessing. This is why order is associated with peace, and peace is associated with divine presence. Removing unnecessary clutter, especially dark or heavy objects that no longer serve purpose, is not about minimalism. It is about release. Letting go creates space. Space invites flow. Another practical layer is emotional honesty. Homes absorb emotional residue. Unspoken resentment, prolonged sadness, unresolved tension. These imprint on spaces. Jewish wisdom teaches that reconciliation and forgiveness cleanse not only the heart, but the environment. If a space feels heavy despite changes, introduce prayer or sacred reading into it. Psalms were often read aloud not only for personal comfort, but to realign atmosphere. Sound carries intention. This is why chants and blessings are spoken, not merely thought. Lighting a candle, even briefly, with intention, is a powerful corrective practice. Fire transforms. Light reveals. Together, they signal renewal. The application of this teaching is not about fear of a color. It is about respect for alignment. Darkness has a role, contrast has meaning, but dominance shapes direction. What dominates your environment will eventually influence your expectations. This is why the sages emphasize daily consciousness over dramatic rituals. Small adjustments, done consistently, reshape spiritual posture, and posture determines what life you are able to receive. As you live this principle, observe changes without forcing interpretation. Notice clarity, notice motivation, notice emotional ease. These are early signs of alignment. Abundance rarely announces itself loudly at first. It begins as flow. This ancient teaching was preserved not to control people, but to free them from invisible resistance. When environment and intention agree, effort multiplies naturally. And as this wisdom settles, something shifts internally. You begin to feel permission to receive, to expect, to hope without guilt. That permission is the true beginning of abundance. Because when the soul feels safe to expand, blessing no longer needs to knock. It recognizes the door as already open. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when understanding turns into remembrance. Not remembering with the mind, but with the soul. This teaching does not arrive to accuse or frighten. It arrives to restore something ancient that was quietly forgotten. The relationship between the human heart and the space it inhabits. The sages told a story of a woman who carried heaviness wherever she lived. She moved houses, changed cities, rearranged her life, yet the same feeling followed her. She believed it was fate. One day, an elder visited her home and said nothing about her struggles. He only asked why the windows were always covered. She replied that lights made her uncomfortable. It revealed too much. The elder gently uncovered one window and said, "What you avoid revealing outside, you also hide inside." Months later, she said her prayers felt different, lighter, not because her life had instantly changed, but because her spirit was no longer shrinking. This is the hidden connection many never make. When we surround ourselves with constant darkness, the soul learns to hide, and a hidden soul struggles to receive. Blessing seeks visibility. It responds to openness. It flows where it is welcomed, not where it must force its way in. Scarcity is not always a lack of resources. Often, it is a lack of permission. Permission to expect good. Permission to receive joy without suspicion. Permission to live in spaces that support rather than suppress the inner life. Many people unknowingly build emotional shelters inside their homes. Layers of darkness meant to protect them from disappointment. But protection can quietly become isolation. And isolation slowly becomes stagnation. The wisdom you are receiving now is compassionate, not condemning. It understands fear. It honors past wounds. And it gently invites transformation without pressure. You are not asked to erase darkness, only to stop letting it dominate. Take a moment and reflect honestly. What does your space communicate to your spirit each day? Does it say rest, or does it say endure? Does it say expand, or does it say withdraw? If this message touches something inside you, write in the comments what you felt while listening. Not what you think, what you felt. Your response is part of the healing. Naming awareness dissolves its power over you. The call of this teaching is not aesthetic. It is spiritual responsibility. Your home is the first sanctuary you inhabit. It teaches your soul what to expect from life, and what the soul expects, life eventually mirrors. This is your invitation to choose alignment, to choose light without fear, to choose openness without guilt, to allow your environment to become an ally instead of a silent adversary. Faith is not only prayer, it is permission. And permission begins with what you allow around you daily. If you are resonating with this theme and feel called to go deeper, there is a resource prepared for you. We have created the Jewish Wisdom ebook, focused on abundant Jewish prosperity, rooted in ancient teachings and practical spiritual alignment. It was designed to help you restore flow, not only in your home, but in your mindset and spiritual posture. To access it, the link is available in the description of this video or in the first pinned comment. Let it walk with you beyond this moment. And let this truth seal itself within you, like a spiritual imprint. When light is honored, the soul breathes. When the soul breathes, blessing finds its way home. There is a closing movement to every true spiritual revelation, not an ending, but a sealing. What has been opened must now be grounded, otherwise it remains only an idea passing through the mind. Ancient wisdom always concluded with integration, because what is not integrated slowly fades, even if it was once deeply felt. What you have received through this message is not about fear of a color, nor about rules imposed from outside. It is about restoration of spiritual coherence. The kind that brings peace without force and clarity without pressure. The kind that reminds you that blessing is not chased, it is hosted. In Jewish understanding, a blessing is not something that falls randomly from heaven. It is something that recognizes familiarity. It settles where it feels welcome. It rests where it is understood. This is why the sages paid such close attention to the unseen forces shaping daily life. They knew that what is repeated silently becomes destiny. Your home is where your spirit rehearses life every day. It is where your thoughts soften or harden. It is where your expectations are formed when no one is watching. And because of that, it is sacred ground, whether you have ever named it as such or not. You are not asked to become perfect. Perfection is not the goal of spiritual life. Alignment is. Small, conscious shifts create profound internal changes. When the soul senses alignment, it relaxes. And a relaxed soul receives more easily than a guarded one. This is why ancient wisdom speaks so often about peace in the home. Peace is not silence. It is harmony. It is the absence of internal resistance. When peace settles, flow begins. And where flow begins, scarcity loses its grip. If you take nothing else from this message, take this truth with you. Your environment is not separate from your faith. It is an extension of it. The light you allow around you teaches your soul how to trust again. The openness you cultivate externally slowly becomes permission internally. And permission is the hidden doorway through which abundance enters. This is not instant magic. It is quiet transformation. The kind that unfolds gently, but changes everything over time. As you move forward, let your home become a conscious partner in your spiritual journey, not a silent witness to old fears. A home is not meant to preserve who you were in survival mode. It is meant to nurture who you are becoming in alignment. Every wall, every room, every corner, quietly participates in your inner dialogue. When your space reflects contraction, your spirit learns to shrink. When your space reflects openness, your spirit remembers how to expand. Let your home reflect growth, not defense. Reflection, not resistance. Let it carry the tone of expectation instead of protection. Protection says, I must be ready for loss. Expectation says, I am prepared for goodness. These two energies cannot coexist for long. One will always dominate the other. And what dominates your environment will eventually influence your inner posture. When your home supports your prayers, something subtle but powerful shifts. Prayer stops feeling like effort and begins to feel like conversation. You no longer ask from a place of tension, but from alignment. The words leave your mouth without resistance because the space around you is no longer contradicting them. Your environment becomes a silent agreement with your faith. This is why ancient wisdom paid attention to what surrounded a person daily. Not because God needs conditions, but because humans do. The soul responds to cues. It responds to atmosphere. It responds to what it senses repeatedly. Over time, those cues become beliefs, and beliefs become expectations. Expectations quietly shape reality. You are allowed to expect goodness. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. Expectation is not entitlement, it is openness. When the heart expects goodness, it relaxes. When it relaxes, it receives. Many people unknowingly block blessing not because they lack faith, but because they have trained themselves to expect disappointment. Your home can help retrain that expectation. Every time you enter a space that feels open, warm, and supportive, your nervous system learns safety. And safety is essential for abundance. Scarcity thrives in fear. Abundance flows where fear loosens its grip. If this message has spoken to you, if it stirred something beneath the surface of your thoughts, honor that stirring. Do not analyze it away. Do not rush past it. Do not silence it with distraction. Ancient transformation rarely begins with loud certainty. It begins with a quiet recognition. A whisper that says, something here is true. That whisper is the soul remembering. Remembering what alignment feels like. Remembering what openness feels like. Remembering that life does not have to be lived in constant defense. Take a moment to breathe into that awareness. Let it settle. Let it soften the places that have been holding tension for too long. You do not need to fix everything at once. Wisdom never demands urgency. It invites consistency. For those who feel called to continue this path with more depth and structure, there is a resource created precisely for this season of awareness. We have prepared the Jewish Wisdom ebook, focused on abundant Jewish prosperity, rooted in ancient teachings, practical alignment, and lived spiritual principles. This ebook is not theory. It is guidance shaped by generations of wisdom that understood how faith, environment, intention, and daily practice work together. It expands on what you have heard here and gently guides you step by step into restoring flow, clarity, and blessing in everyday life. Not only financially, but emotionally and spiritually as well. Because true prosperity is never one-dimensional. It is balance, it is peace, it is the quiet confidence that life can support you. To access the ebook, the link is available in the description of this video or in the first pinned comment. It is there for you whenever you feel ready to go deeper. There is no pressure, only invitation. Wisdom waits patiently. And now, allow this final truth to settle within you as a spiritual seal. Not as poetry, but as principle. When intention and environment walk together, resistance dissolves. When resistance dissolves, the soul stops bracing itself. When the soul stops bracing itself, blessing no longer struggles to arrive. It recognizes familiarity. It recognizes openness. It recognizes that it is finally welcome.